Hi guys, Megan here, coming on to encourage you guys this week. I have been reading a pretty challenging book at the moment, and so what I thought I would do today is actually read you a small portion of one of the chapters that has, it's encouraged me to think differently about how I go through my day. So this book is called The Liturgy of the Ordinary. It's written by a female Anglican minister who is a mum who lives her life as an ordained Anglican minister, and just the way she writes really, I guess, speaks to me in my stage of life. But I think this can probably relate to a lot of us. So I'm going to read a bit of it and then just share my reflections on what I've been thinking about. A few years ago, right before Lent, I became curious about bed making. Specifically, it occurred to me that thousands, perhaps even millions of adults make their beds, a shocking idea to me because I almost never did. I had assumed that most people outside of a small group of elite, Pinterest perfect superhumans didn't make their bed unless they were hosting a party or their mum was visiting. I know that for bed making devotees, this is a hard thing to fathom. But in my mind, bed making was something that we all collectively shed as soon as we could, like wearing a retainer or doing algebra homework. What was the point? You'd mess it up again that evening. It is a silly exercise. Make the bed, unmake it again, make it again, over and over, and for what? The dishes must be washed so you can reuse them. The laundry must be done so you have clean clothes, although I stretch that as far as I can. But the bed functions just as well with the sheets messy as it does with them pulled tight and tucked in neatly. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the feeling of crawling into a made bed, especially with freshly clean sheets, but not so much that I actually considered making it. Out of my newfound curiosity, I asked a close friend whether she made her bed, and she did. Not daily, but more often than not. And funnily enough, she usually did it in the evening, right before she crawled in. Well, that made no sense and totally intrigued me, and so I took to Facebook and did an informal survey, asking who made their bed and how often. People responded, lots of people, and with surprising passion. Some made it daily, first thing zealously, and some never made it. Some thought it was preposterous to even consider making it, and while others thought that not making the bed was akin to not brushing your teeth or not paying your taxes. Many made their bed erratically, and maybe 3 out of 7 days, and a shocking number made their bed at night. Some promised me that bed making would change my life, that I'd be more successful, happy, and productive with a made bed. At that time, my typical morning routine was that shortly after waking, I'd grab my phone. Like digital caffeine, it would prod my foggy brain into coherence and activity. Before getting out of bed, I'd check my email, I'd scroll through the news, glance at Facebook or Twitter. If humans rescue a baby animal in the wild, the animal is said to be imprinted. It accepts that human as its mother, and from that point on, it will believe that all good things come from people. It is no longer wild, and it cannot live on its own. The nature centre in my town houses imprinted animals, baby mountain lions, raccoons, and porcupines, who rely on humans for food, water, shelter, and protection. My morning phone ritual was brief, no more than 5 or 10 minutes, but I was imprinted. My day was imprinted by technology, and like a mountain lion cub attached to her humans, I'd look for all good things to come from glowing screens. Technology began to fill every empty moment in my day. Just before breakfast, I'd quickly scroll through email, Facebook, Twitter, a blog, and then again an hour later, I'd ignore my kids' persistent calls for milk and snacks with a distracted hold on as I vaguely skimmed an article. I'd sneak in 5 minutes online as they ate lunch. I'd return from an errand and sit in the driveway with the car running, scrolling news on my phone, and then I'd check my screen again before bedtime. Throughout the day, I'd fed on a near constant stream of news, entertainment, stimulation, likes and retweets. And without realizing it, I had slowly built a habit, a steady resistance to and dread of boredom. After my makeshift sociological study on bed making, I decided that for Lent that year, I'd exchange routines. I'd stop waking up with my phone and instead I'd make the bed first thing. I also decided to spend the first few minutes after I made the bed sitting in silence. So I banished my smartphone from the bedroom. My new Lenten routine didn't make me wildly successful or cheerfully buoyant as some had promised, but I began to notice very subtly that my day was imprinted differently. The first activity of my day, the first move that I made, was not that of a consumer, but that of a co-laborer with God. Instead of going to a device for a morning fix of instant infotainment, I touched the tangible softness of our well-worn covers, tugged against wrinkled cotton, and felt the hard wood beneath my bare feet. In the creation story, God entered chaos and he made order and beauty. In making my bed, I reflected that creative act in the tiniest, most ordinary way. In my small chaos, I made small order. And I'll stop there. When I started to read this, it started to resonate with me quite a lot. Not only because I too don't understand why we make our bed, but I guess it made a lot of sense. I think often we spend our time filling our minds or filling our moments with things that do not connect us to God, and I think this just made a lot of sense to me. I don't know, it challenged me, it made me think differently about how I start my day. I think specifically in relation to Easter, we're coming up to Easter this weekend. At the very beginning of time, it talked about God creating order out of chaos, and the Easter story was that again. It's God's constant commitment to be with us as humans, and so I just felt super challenged by reading this. I felt challenged to start my day differently. I felt challenged to to look at things a little differently than I have been in the past. So I just wanted to encourage you with that. I think we're coming into a season at church where we need to take things a little bit more seriously, and I think we need to be creating habits in our own lives that do draw us closer to God. And so I just found that this little metaphor, this simple act of making your bed in the morning and what that can symbolize, was a really awesome starting point for me, and it really encouraged me to start somewhere and to start to make positive changes toward gaining that closeness with God. So I hope this encouraged you. I hope it challenged you, praying that you all have an amazing Easter, whether you are away with family, whether you are here in Christchurch. I hope to see you on Sunday. I hope you are all blessed this coming Easter.